Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The NFL Show is brought to you, as always, by Replenishing Care and Technologies. You can check them out at rcandt.com. I am your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
All right. Last night, Broncos, Jets. I think it was a better game than what people expected it to be, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was competitive at the very least, and we got that out of it. It was a sloppy game, though, honestly. With the quarterback, you would expect that to be a kind of tricky game.
Well, and I still don't think this is Sam Darnold's fault. I think it's a shame he's stuck with the Jets. He was 23 for 42, 230 yards. He was their leading rusher, 6 carries, 84 yards. The Broncos, on the other hand, you had a new quarterback in Brett Rippon, who threw 3 picks, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns. Melvin Gordon, 23 for 107. These are just not very good football teams. So, I mean, there was no crowd, but it would have just been a bunch of booing all night probably anyways.
Really, it really would have. They were both very bad. I think Denver found a little bit of something in Tim Patrick and Jared Judy. They had some couple good plays there, so there are elements to build on for these young receivers. But on the other hand, New York, I mean, it's really Sam Darnold and no one else at this point. Because Darnold looked phenomenal at points last night. He had some really good drives, some really good plays, and he's done that throughout the first couple of weeks of the year. But he can't put together a full game because his surrounding pieces are just so bad.
All right, let's go ahead and let's look ahead to the other Week 4 games where I think we have some better matchups. We may not start off with one as we got the 0-3 Minnesota Vikings travel to Houston. The Houston Texans are actually favored by 4 points here, and I think it's safe to say the Minnesota defense is, not very good. And the Vikings are just not good. I think they're the worst team in the NFC North right now. The Texans are small favorites here, and they've played the Ravens, Chiefs, and Steelers en route to the 0-3. So when I look at this game, I think Deshaun Watson's the difference here, and I think the Texans win this game.
Yeah, I'm going to go opposite here. I think if the Vikings play the way they did last week against the Titans, I think they'll win the game. They put up 30 points. They had that kind of offense. And Justin Jefferson was a real difference maker. If he can continue to bring some success from last week into this week's games, he's going to do well. I think they'll win by more than 4 points.
You're nuts. All right, next up, the Los Angeles Chargers will travel to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. And the question here is, can Justin Herbert limit the turnovers or possibly eliminate the turnovers? And the Bucs, Tom Brady played much better last week in Denver. Is that just because it was in Denver? Or are they starting to click here? The Bucs are favored by 7.5.
They are favored, but they have some injuries to deal with. They don't have Chris Godwin. They don't have Leonard Fournette. Both those guys are out for this week. So they're going to be working again with the limited offense. They really have not had a single game this year where all their best offensive pieces have been on the field at the same time. That being said, I'm still going with the Buccaneers here because Justin Herbert, like you said, hasn't proven enough to me. He's got a turnover machine at this point. I think Brady is going to be better with the ball and better with ball control moving forward. He won't turn it over as much. The Buccaneers should win this one pretty easily.
Yeah, let's face it. If there's a team that can lose a skill position player or two and survive, it's the Bucs, who are loaded everywhere. And I'm going to go with the Bucs also. And I think we're getting to a stretch here where maybe the Bucs can put a little distance between them and the Saints, which gives them an even better chance to win this, especially if Michael Thomas isn't back yet. So I think it's a big game for the Bucs. I'm going to go with the Bucs also. Next up, the Cleveland Browns at the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are favored by 4.5. Sam, this is my upset special of the week. I like Cleveland to win this game. I think Denver's offense or Dallas's defense is not very good. They can be run on, and I think with these running backs, these skill position players, I think this is going to be the shootout, and I think the Cleveland Browns will not just cover the spread. I think the Cleveland Browns pull the upset here.
I think the Browns will cover the spread, but I still think Dallas is going to win this game. The Cowboys have proven to me over the past couple of weeks that you're right, they have absolutely no defense whatsoever, but they're capable of scoring very quickly, and are capable of putting up 40 points in the game if they have to. I think Dallas has enough offensive firepower to just outpace the Browns and potentially force Cleveland to throw the ball, which, again, with Baker Mayfield, if you're throwing the ball 30 to 35 times a game, you're probably going to lose. I feel like Dallas will just outpace Cleveland at this game.
I think you're nuts. I think Cleveland wins this game, Sam. You're not going to convince me otherwise. They've got pretty much, I think they've got maybe more firepower than Dallas, except I think the quarterback position is better than Dallas. But with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I think they're going to run the ball right down the Cowboys' throat, and that's going to open up things for Odell Beckham.
It may be so, but I still think Dallas is capable of coming back and scoring quicker than Cleveland can keep up with. I mean, the Browns, it's not like they have a terrific defense either. If you look outside of Myles Garrett and maybe Sheldon Richardson up front, they really don't have pieces there to compete with the weapons Dallas has.
All right, so let us agree that you're probably going to be wrong on this one, but it happens, Sam.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, I'm glad to see we're picking some different games this week. It's boring when we pick the same teams all the time.
Yeah, and I'm picking the Cleveland Browns. When does that ever happen? But I really – I just think there's issues in Dallas. I think there's issues in Cleveland, but the biggest issue I think in Dallas is Mike McCarthy. And when you talk about the Cowboys can score points quickly, my point is with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt running the ball, I think Cleveland can actually slow this game down and put more pressure on Dallas, which can lead to Dallas turning the ball over because they're going to feel like they have to score. And I think the Cowboys' drives may all be 5 minutes or less. But I think the Browns, all their scoring drives are going to be 5 minutes or more. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on that Dallas offense.
Well, we've seen Mike McCarthy make some dumb play calls in response to being down late before. It was against Atlanta. He had 2 fake punt calls that both failed. I mean, if they do stuff like that, if they pull stupid play calls like that, then yeah, they'll lose the game. I'm hoping they learned a little bit from that and they don't screw up. But at the same point, I mean, this is a battle of 2 incompetent franchises right now, so I really don't know who's going to come out on top. I'm still leaning towards Dallas, though.
All right, now the Ravens are favored by 13 at Washington. What's the status of Chase Young?
Yeah, as far as I know, Chase Young is kind of being held out with precautionary. I don't think they'll rush him back. He's not going to be available as far as I've heard to this point. With him out in the field, but not him out there, I think Baltimore is probably the clean favorite. And they were clean favorites anyways. But without Chase Young, I think there's an extreme gap there between them and Baltimore.
Well, I think the biggest gap here is Dwayne Haskins and his ability to be an NFL quarterback.
I mean, yeah, he really proved it last week.
I really think this. Washington's defense is built to be able to at least slow down the Baltimore offense. But I think this is a game where they might be able to keep it close for a quarter and a half, and then I think Baltimore just goes off on them and wins the game easily.
Yeah, I think they'll win by more than 13 points, and I think it's pretty clear because they have, as you said, they have pieces up front to slow down Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, Justice Hill, and whoever else they throw out there. But at the same point, they're not going to be able to do it for 4 quarters. They're not going to be able to keep up with Baltimore's offense. And Dwayne Haskins, he turned the ball over 4 times against Cleveland last week, and that's against the Browns' defense. Imagine what's going to happen against Baltimore. I don't think Haskins can keep up. It's going to be probably a turnover-prone situation there where Baltimore just gets a lot of easy situations.
All right, next up, the Arizona Cardinals coming off a tough loss at home to the Detroit Lions. Will go to Carolina to battle the Panthers, who are coming off a big win against the Chargers. I think this is a game where I think Arizona gets it right. I think they're a young team. I think they kind of got snuck up on last week. I think the Cardinals win this game. I think their defense is better than what people think it is. I would take the Cardinals here and give the 3.5 points.
I think they'll cover. I think the Panthers are going to cover those 3.5 points, but I still would take the Cardinals because I think the Panthers are a better team than what we've given them credit for. To a sense, they're capable of sticking with teams like the Cardinals. They'll get blown out by the better teams in the NFL, by the elite teams. But by a team like Arizona that proved last week they have some serious flaws. They have the potential to make a lot of mistakes. I think Carolina will keep it close.
All right, the 2-1 Indianapolis Colts will travel to Chicago to take on the somehow 3-0 Chicago Bears, now led by Nick Foles. What do you think here, Sam?
This is a bit of a tricky spot for me, honestly. I think this is a more of a tricky game than I anticipate because Nick Foles is really the X factor in this scenario. I have no idea what he's going to do, what he's going to look like out there. I'll lean towards the Colts just because they are a known factor for me. But if Nick Foles plays well, if he plays like Ryan Fitzpatrick did this past week, then really the Bears have a situation where they could control Indianapolis' running defense. They had the pieces to do that. I was still leaning the Colts.
Right. I think the Colts win this game, and I think they win it by double digits. And it's not a shot at the Bears, who are 3-0. Well, I guess it is because they're not a 3-0 football team. I don't think they're going to get a 15-point fourth-quarter comeback against the Colts. I think the Colts' offensive line will control the game. Phillip Rivers will throw a couple touchdowns. I think the Colts win in like 24.
Yeah, my only counterpoint is that the Bears potentially have a decent defensive line linebacking core that maybe could slow the game down for Indianapolis or maybe just keep them from dominating in the running game the way they usually do. But I mean, that's a weak counterpoint because they really could just overwhelm Chicago.
All right, next up, the New Orleans Saints 1-2 at the Detroit Lions 1-2. This is a game that I think is huge for both of these teams, but especially the Saints. They're 4.5-point favorites, but I don't think this is a lock here, especially we don't know if Michael Thomas is going to be back or not. Even if he is, how effective will he be after a few weeks off? They do have Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara. What do you think here?
Yeah, I'm still going to take the Saints, and I don't think they're going to cover. The Saints will cover the spread. I feel like this is going to be a situation where they go out there and they win the game fairly effectively. I know I talked you out of picking the Lions last week. I'm going to go against the Lions again. I think the Saints are going to win this one fairly easily.
I don't think they will. I think
Really?
the Lions are going to win this game. Like, I'm going to go Lions 21, Saints 17. I think the Saints have some issues. I think Detroit is better than what people think they are. They should have, by all rights, won the first game. The second game, they're up 14-3 early against Green Bay in Green Bay. I think Detroit pulls the upset. Sam, what the hell?
I'm going to keep going against. I'm going to keep picking against Detroit. I'm going to keep going against them, and eventually, maybe they'll force me to pick the Lions. But for right now, I'm not picking them.
All right, next up, the Seattle Seahawks, who are undefeated at 3-0, will travel to Miami to take on the Ryan Fitzpatrick-led Miami Dolphins. The Seahawks are favored by 6.5. I think I would consider taking the points in this game. I think Seattle wins because I think Russell Wilson is too good. He's going to hit them with a lot of deep balls. I think Seattle wins this game something like 35-30, 35-24, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, I think Seattle wins this game too, but I think Miami's going to cover just because the Seahawks have a history of playing down to teams. They'll go out there and they'll compete with the best teams in the NFL and have close games, but then they'll go and play a team that's down on its luck or a bad team, and for some reason they play close games. They just play down to the level of their opponents. I think Miami will be in this game late in the game, or they'll score late to maybe close within the number of points necessary to cover. I still think Miami's going to cover, but I think Seattle will win, and they'll win and feel comfortable with it.
All right, now we've got, of course, the most important game of the week. The Jacksonville Jaguars at 1-2 will take on the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 0-2-1. The interesting thing here is you have the Bengals with the worst offensive line in football against the Jaguars, who have maybe the worst pass rush in football.
Yeah, so are you betting on the Bengals again? Are you going back to the Bengals, or are you being realistic?
Again, when have I bet on the Bengals? When have I picked the Bengals this year?
Didn't you pick them against the Chargers? Let me scroll. I can look back and see, Mike.
I think I did maybe pick them against the Chargers, but I haven't picked them since.
Yeah, I don't think you have picked them since. You picked them against the Browns too. We both did.
Okay. Well, I think I was taking the points. But go ahead. What do you got? Jaguars or Bengals?
You know what? I'm going to bet on Joe Burrow. Like, Joe Burrow will be the better quarterback in the situation. I know he's going to get hammered probably even by a weak Jaguars pass rush, but I think Joe Burrow is good enough to separate Cincinnati from Jacksonville and win this game.
See, I would think that too, but the Jaguars have played hard for 3 games. The Bengals are soft. They're led by a soft head coach who basically is a little girl and an offensive line coach who probably shouldn't be an offensive line coach for a peewee football team. So until further notice, I'm never picking the Bengals again because I think that Zach Taylor is an absolute joke. The front office is an absolute joke. It would not surprise me if Joe Burrow wins this game 42-35. But from what I've seen, Jacksonville does stop the run halfway decent. So I think if they can take away Joe Mixon, then you got Bobby Hart, Fred Johnson, Billy Price, all 3 guys that don't even belong in the NFL. And I'm going to go with the Jaguars because I think that they are probably physically and mentally tougher team. I hate to say it, but that's just the way.
I love hearing you talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. It's just enjoyable to me.
Well, I mean, it's because they're weak-kneed little sissies. So it's what they've been since 1991. Next up, the New York Giants, 0-3 at the Los Angeles Rams, who are 2-1. The spread is 13. I don't – if the spread was 23, I still think I would take the Rams.
Yeah, no, I would too. I mean, just based on what happened to the Giants the last couple of weeks, the teams they played – been banged up and a little bit injured, and they've still gotten crushed. I mean, Daniel Jones is a turnover machine. And we saw the Rams were really close. They were basically a penalty away from being the Buffalo Bills this past week. The Rams are probably a top 10, if not maybe even a top 7 football team in the NFL right now. I think they'll go out there and they'll win handedly, probably by 3 or 4 scores.
All right, now this is an interesting one. The Patriots at 2-1 will travel to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. The Chiefs are a touchdown favorite. Now, number one, Monday night, the Chiefs had a huge win in Baltimore against the Ravens. The Patriots are led by Bill Belichick. Do the Patriots cover? Can the Patriots win?
You know what? I'll say they cover. I don't think they're going to win. I'll take the Chiefs, but I think the Patriots will cover because we saw something this year that I don't think we saw last year. They've been able to run the ball and run the ball effectively with Sonny Michel, Rex Burkhead, the number of guys they have. James White's going to be coming back. He missed the past couple of games because his father passed away. So I think they have enough running backs here, enough of a running game to potentially keep Mahomes off the field a bit and control the pace of the game.
I think you're nuts. I think the Chiefs win this game by more than a touchdown. I hate to do that because I love Bill Belichick and I like the Patriots. I wanted a few people to do, but what the hell? They always beat the Steelers and the Colts in the playoffs, which always kept you Steelers and Colts fans quiet. So I just, when I look at it, they can run the ball, but can they throw the ball? Defensively, they've been decent this year, but this is a team that gave up 35 to Seattle. Seattle's got a hell of an offense, but Seattle doesn't have the weapons Kansas City has, even though they have the better quarterback. So when I look at this, I think the Kansas City Chiefs win this game 37-20.
Yeah, Steve Rizzo agrees with you in the comments.
If this is a close game, then, all bets are off, and the Patriots are a player here. I just don't see that they have the talent to match up with them. We talked about certain teams that may have the talent to match up with Kansas. I know the ability to run the ball is a huge thing here, but when I look at them, it's just Steve Rizzo, as you said, he just made a comment that they have too much offense. He also said the Pats run the ball, but they'll stay. KC has 2. Yeah, so I agree with Steve. When you look at this, there's just too much offense here. I don't think you got enough weapons for Cam for him to be able to keep up with what he's going to face on Sunday afternoon. Next up, the Buffalo Bills, 3-0 at the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 2-1. This is a huge game, I think, for the Raiders because, kind of got dominated last week by the Patriots. The Bills are favored by 3. And I think the Bills should win this game. Josh Allen's playing really good football. Devin Singletary ran well last week. Zach Moss will likely be back. And Stephon Diggs is going to go off here. I think when I look around the internet, a lot of people picking the Raiders in this game. I still don't think the Bills get the respect they should get. I think the Bills may be the second best team in the AFC right now. I think Buffalo wins this game, and I think they win it by more points.
Yeah, I think they cover the spread and win this game fairly easily. It is one of those games, though, I think people are still thinking about Buffalo maybe from last year, even the year before that, where the Bills were kind of like a mediocre playoff team. They're not that team anymore. This is an elite squad, and Allen's playing like a top 5 quarterback. This is a much different team than we've seen in the past. I think there are people out there who are still associating them with that kind of mid-level team, which they really aren't anymore.
Yeah, and Steve says that Josh Allen's a top 10 quarterback. And Steve, we finally got, Sam on the same page with us.
Look, he was so bad the first 2 years of his career. He was so bad that I had to, there's no way I could predict that he wouldn't turn around and be so good.
No, wait a second. So bad as Dwayne Haskins. He's never been Dwayne Haskins.
No, but he hasn't been. I wouldn't say he was good either. He wasn't above average. He wasn't even an average quarterback for the majority of his career.
There were multiple games in the last 2 seasons where he played really well. You never get that from Dwayne Haskins.
That's true. It's very different. He's not Mitchell Trubisky or Dwayne Haskins. I'll give you that.
All right. Now we have, good point by Steve. He did win 10 games last year. The Philadelphia Eagles, 0-2-1. We had to score some points at some point. The Eagles 0-2-1 at the San Francisco 49ers, who were 2-1. This is a matchup to start the year. Looked like it would be a good game, but neither team is intact. I would say from what I saw last week, I think Mullins is a good enough quarterback. I think from what I saw from the Eagles last week, they have major issues. I'm going to take the 49ers at home.
Yeah, and George Kittle's expected to come back and play this game. So you're adding George Kittle to a banged-up receiving group. Then Nick Mullins threw for over 300 yards this past week. If you can do that when Brandon Ayuk's fairly healthy and you have Mohamed Sanu, if you get George Kittle back, I would assume you would dominate against Philadelphia. And they're a team that only tied the Cincinnati Bengals, somehow couldn't find a way to win that game. I'm taking the 49ers. I think the 49ers will win easily. And whatever the spread is, I'm sure the 49ers are going to cover it.
All right, next up, we got the Packers favored by 7 at Lambeau on Monday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons. I think it's say it's probably going to be a shootout, Sam.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a shootout. I mean, they're really Green Bay's defense to some degree. They have guys like Jair Alexander, Adrian Amos. Not a terrible defense, but Matt Ryan's very good at picking these kind of defenses apart. It's really not a shutdown, lockdown kind of team. And even I'll say this, even Todd Gurley might be able to get going here because the Packers are not that great against the run, even with someone like Kenny Clark in the middle. I think this is really going to be a game where you can see both teams score 40 points.
So if you are including the 7 points, who do you pick?
If we're including, I think the Falcons will cover the spread. I think the Falcons will keep this one really close. But it's Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to pick against Aaron Rodgers. I'll take Green Bay.
All right. I'm going to go with Green Bay, too. I think they win this game something like 45-28. I mean, the one thing about the Falcons, they do have some offense, but that lack of defense puts so much pressure on your offense that I think that they will stay in this game for about 3 quarters. And then I think the wheels fall off and Green Bay just bludgeons them in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I mean, that's kind of what happened against Chicago, though, because they didn't score. I don't think they scored in the 4th quarter. Meanwhile, Nick Foles went and scored 3 touchdowns and turned the game around. That's really how it's working out for them. At this point, they can't close games, and that's really on Dan Quinn, which is why I'm astonished he's still the head coach after 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think getting them to the Super Bowl has got to wear off at some point, and you got to look at what's happened lately.
Yeah, because I think they made the playoffs the year after they lost the Super Bowl. Well, I'm pretty sure they haven't made it since then. So they've been a losing franchise for the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, not 3, but I think this is the 2nd year they haven't made the playoffs. Because I think 2 years ago, didn't they make the playoffs and lose to the Rams in L.A.?
They did not make it in 2018. They didn't make it in 2019. It was 2017. They ended up losing to the Eagles. So they haven't been to the playoffs since 2017.
That Super Bowl was that long ago?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like it.
No, it really doesn't.
All right. Any more NFL news you want to talk about?
They've moved the Steelers-Titans game to Week 7, and they pushed back Steelers-Baltimore to Week 8. And I understand you have to do it because of COVID-19. I understand that. Yeah, Steve Friz is right. Dan Quinn should have been fired after last year. He shouldn't have been brought back for another run.
I think he should have been fired.
I'm annoyed Pittsburgh.
I think you should have been fired after that Super Bowl, but that's another issue.
And you see Kyle Shanahan left. He got a new job just to go and take another team to the Super Bowl and end up losing because he couldn't control the clock. But
yeah,
Pittsburgh, Tennessee gets moved back. It's kind of frustrating as a Steelers fan personally because having a Week 4 bye week, I mean, you can probably speak to this, but I don't think a Week 4 bye week is ideal in any means. You get to play 13 games here straight. If you get banged or get injured, you don't have that extra week to potentially rest up. I'm a little annoyed that you have a Week 4 bye week now versus what you would have had a Week 8 bye week.
Well, my biggest concern if I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan is this. The Tennessee Titans are playing well right now, but their defense isn't. You push this back another month, you might get to the point where the defense is starting to gel, and you may have an even tougher Tennessee team to deal with by then.
My other concern is that Pittsburgh's very streaky, I guess you could say. When they get momentum going, they can rail off 5 or 6 wins. But when they start losing, they usually lose 1 or 2 in a row. I don't want to have a situation where we have to play Tennessee one week, Baltimore the next. And right now you're stopping the momentum of a 3-game winning streak. So for me, this is just Pittsburgh's one of the ultimate losers in this situation. Because of how the season started.
You, Pittsburgh, are the ultimate losers.
Hey, I don't want to hear from a Cincinnati fan, okay?
Why? At least when I go to a game, not all the women weigh 400 pounds.
Okay. All right, we're back to the making fun.
Only about 90% of them. Because we're not that far from Pittsburgh. But anything else before we wrap it up, Sam?
I think we covered most of the NFL news. The one player I would keep an eye on for injuries this week they're thinking Julio Jones will suit up to play against Green Bay Packers, and if he does, I would keep an eye out. I think the Falcons can cover that spread.
All right. Well, I hope they can win the game because I'm not a big Packer fan. All right. I guess we will wrap it up for today. Make sure you follow Sam Teets on Twitter at SamTeets33. Follow me at The Grueling Truth. You can hear our show live Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitch, Periscope. There's a couple other places I always forget because they're not up in the little thing. But you can also hear our show afterwards, podcast form on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for now, for Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.